Hello everyone and welcome back to Ushanka Show, the YouTube channel where you can always learn something new about life in the Soviet Union. Today's video is a part 3 of my recollection of going to the Soviet-era college back in 1988 in Kiev, Soviet Ukraine. In the comment section below you'll find the links to my first video called Going to College and the second video, College Entry Exams, as well as a link to my playlist, Soviet Education. So summer of 1988 was probably one of the most stressful summers I experienced as a teenager. First, I had so-called exit exams, so выпускные экзамены, in my high school, and right after that I had to roll into entry exams into the college, into Kiev Polytechnical Institute. But if you watched my previous video, you already know that I did pretty well. I not only scored high enough to be accepted into the institute and beat other guys, and the competition was, I think, was 2.5 people per one spot. I also scored high enough to be qualified for so-called повышенная стипендия, so better stipend. And instead of 35 rubles per month, I was getting paid to study 50 rubles per month. And I actually remember the day when I came back to the KPI, Kiev Polytechnical Institute, to check the list of people who got accepted. So there was a large billboard with, sheets of paper, and there was names and names and names of all the students that got accepted. You had to go down the list according to alphabet and find Sergei Sputnikov was now a student of Kiev Polytechnical Institute. So of course I was super excited, and then I noticed another piece of paper on the same board. And as I read it, my heart sunk. It was a notice about 4 guys that just like me were successful in passing entry tests, but then they decided to party and celebrate, and they purchased too much alcohol, and at some point they had so much fun they started throwing empty bottles out of the window of their dorm, and now there was a notice that 4 of them will be let go. Just imagine this: you travel all the way to Kiev, you successfully passed the entry test, and then you did something so stupid, and now you have to come back and explain to your parents and friends what happened in Kiev. Okay, so now I can start answering your questions, and quite a few people asked about dorms. Like here, Larry was asking, I know you lived in Kiev, but did they have dorms for the students from other areas, or were they left to fend to themselves? And were they given any extra allowance because they were not local? Yes, of course, every Soviet college had dormitories, and even smaller, like PTU, Professional Technical College, would have dormitories, and we call it общежитие. Общежитие. That's how we say dorms in Russian language, and it means common living. Общежитие. Or in Ukrainian, we say гуртожиток. Гуртожиток. So that's together living. Гуртожиток. So I made a screenshot from Google Maps. So this is the area where all the dorms of Kiev Polytechnical Institute are. And it's probably too small for you to read, but there's KPI dormitory number 8. Dormitory number 7, dormitory number 15, number 19, and even KPI dormitory number 20. And Google search took me to their website that confirmed that there are 20 dormitories on the territory of the university. So now it's called university, it used to be called institute, which are home of over 13,000 students. I didn't know that. So Kiev Polytechnical Institute, they can teach up to 20,000 students at the same time, so 4 years, so 5,000 students each year. And dormitories will house 13,000, so pretty much 2/3 of the students in my institute usually are out of town. And those dormitories are divided into 17 dormitories for singles, and I assume there were more for guys than for girls, because it's like 90% of students during my day were male. They had also 2 family dormitories and 1 dormitory for postgraduate students. And here's the most interesting information. So dorms for single people are so-called corridor type or block type. And each room can accommodate 3 to 4 students. In corridor type dormitories, rooms with toilets and wash basins are located on each floor at both sides of the corridor. So you have 2 bathrooms for the whole floor. Shower is located on the first floor. So if you want to shower, you need to go down on the first floor. And there are 2 kitchens on each floor. Unfortunately, I couldn't figure out how many rooms on each floor. So each room had 3 to 4 people, 2 bathrooms for the whole floor, and 2 kitchens for the whole floor. And the bathroom is just toilets. If you want to take a shower, you need to go downstairs. And they also have so-called block-type dormitories. Those consist of 2 or 5 rooms. And each block has a separately toilets and shower. So this is more upscale. And in the dorms where a block consists of 5 rooms, kitchen is located in that specific block. And the other one is on the floor. Okay, and back to the question. So students actually had to pay for staying in the dorms. The cost was 1 ruble and 20 kopecks. So we're talking back in Soviet days. 1 ruble 20 kopecks per bed. So they call it койка место. So they had, for example, 4 cots in the room. So you occupy that bed and you pay 1 ruble 20 kopecks per month. So roughly 6 or 7 loaves of bread times $3. So we're looking at about $18 a month if you compare bread to bread for just a bed. It's not the whole room, just one bed in the room that had 4 people. And you need to keep in mind those rooms were tiny, about like 65 square feet with 4 beds crammed in it. So that's pretty tight living quarters right there. Now the better design dorm rooms, so-called block style, those were 5 rubles per bed. So now you have more comfort, but you pay 4 times higher price. So students had to pay for the cost of the dorms, and college didn't help them in any ways. There were probably maybe programs for some students that maybe came from so-called многодетная семья, from family with a lot of children, but usually they had to pay that 1 ruble 20 kopecks per bed, and they had to pay up front for the whole semester. So you stay in, for 6 months, you have to pay up front the cost of dorms. And I already mentioned my stipend. So the lowest stipend was 35 rubles per month. And then if you are a good student like I was, you get in 50 rubles per month. And I just want to give you another price comparison, this time in butter. So 35 rubles per month is your stipend. So you can buy only 10 kilograms of butter per month. So it was $3.50 per kilo back in the Soviet days. In modern days United States, Meyer brand butter is $7.60 per kilo. So picture you getting a stipend of $76 per month. That's not a lot of money. So what the most out-of-town students did on the weekends or any opportunity, they will travel back home and bring foods back. So they'll bring sacks of potatoes, meat, whatever parents will give them. So they constantly had to shuttle back and forth so they can have decent food. And I also need to remind you that back in the Soviet days, we didn't have any pre-made food. So no frozen pizza, no popcorn, nothing like that. No easy foods to make. So people had to cook from scratch all the time or make bologna sandwiches. So yeah, that was a challenge. I was happy that I could stay with my family and go to college. And here's actually a street view of my college dorms. These 3 buildings, they look like open books. They look similar to famous buildings in Moscow. They were built in the late 70s, early 80s. So that's the most modern dorms in my college. And you see, it's probably 9 or 12 story high. Has a lot of people in those. Here's another example of my college dorms that's built around Nikita Khrushchev area, 5 story high, Khrushchevka style dorm apartments. Believe it or not, but this building is also dormitory of my college. And this is from the Stalin era, so-called Stalinka. So way more massive, way more ornate. And I'm not sure when it was built, maybe in 50s, maybe in 40s. Okay, and next question. Having went to college in the US in much simpler early 70s, did the school provide all your books and supplies for labs and such? Did you have any choice for elective additional classes you could take? Okay, so with the books it was pretty easy. You take the list the teachers give you and you go to college library, which you could see on the photo, and you just give them the list and they give you the books. You sign up for it. You have your ID, of course, that you're a student of this college, so we don't have to pay for our books. And if it comes to supplies, if you mean like pens and pencils, rulers, this is what we had to buy ourselves. College didn't provide that. And the question about any choice in classes, no, absolutely no choice. No additional classes. Program was already pretty intense. So they give you the schedule. This is the subjects you're going to study. If you're going to be engineer of, electronics or engineer of welding. and this is what you have to study, pass the tests, and no choice. Okay, now back to the first question of Larry Hankins. Did any of your classes have hands-on labs, or was it all book and lectures? Okay, so the first year was pretty much lectures and books, and it was pretty much the same across the board. So it doesn't matter if you get into the so-called fakultet, so department which teaches you to be engineer of electronics, or department that teaches you to be engineer of welding. First year usually was the same, advanced math, physics, foreign language, some electronics or whatever. So the first year was pretty much the same. And some students could jump. For example, they realize like, oh, I don't like what I do here. Maybe they will allow you to move around if there's a room. So yeah, first year was just lectures. Then starting from the second year, we had a total of 4 years. Then you have different labs and stuff like that. There was also a comment by Jacob. Therefore, in the Soviet Union, apply for college right away or be forced to serve in the Red Army. Well, for girls, it didn't apply. Sergey, you were lucky enough to apply for college with those good grades, even being a Komsomol member. Okay, so I need to remind everyone, we had a military draft in the Soviet Union, so every male reaching the age of 18 would be drafted into the military in the spring or in the fall based on your date of birth. And for the guys, the only way to avoid military service will be to get into college. Not every college had the option of that so-called военная кафедра, military department. Some colleges didn't have it, so you finish first year, and then before you go to second year, you'll get drafted. They'll keep your spot. You will serve 2 years or 3 years if you go to Navy. Then you can come back and continue education. But some colleges like Kyiv Polytechnical Institute had a military cafedra, military department. Then you completely would skip military service. I don't know if I will say I was lucky enough to apply for college with those good grades. Personally, my eyesight was so poor that I already had a medical examination when I was still in high school. Everyone had to go through that. I have a video about it. If you missed it by any chance, it's in my Soviet education playlist. And then, they check your eyes, and they said that I'm not good for military service. Only if there is a war, then I could be like digging trenches. But otherwise, for me, it really didn't matter. I would skip military regardless. Another thing you need to know about Soviet colleges, we had so-called fakulteты. So it could be translated as departments or faculties. So for example, I got accepted to RTF, Radiotechnicheский факультет, Radio Technical Faculty. And that pass-through grade I was talking about in my previous video, it applied only to RTF. So you go to a specific university, but there could be a different competition depending on what you want to study. So if you, for example, you go to university and there could be challenge to become a teacher of English, but it will be less competition if you want to become a teacher of Japanese language or some other languages. So not just a college, but faculties in the college had a different pass-through grade. I also wanted to show you this map. So this is how I would get from my home when I used to live in Kyiv to my college. The distance only 6 miles, but it's 41 minutes walking to the tram station and then riding a tram. So it took forever to cover 6 miles to get to college every day, and then of course to go back after you're done with school. Okay, so I believe it's a good spot to stop right here, and in my next video I'll tell you this amazing story how all these new students like me were asked to go and work for 2 weeks at the Soviet, it wasn't a collective farm, it was a sovkhoz, the same thing. For 2 weeks we had to spend out in the country helping that farm to harvest beets, harvest onions, and do some other stuff. So that's coming up in my next video. Okay, my friends, that's all I have for you today. As always, please don't forget to like this video, maybe post a comment, even your basic comment. Like I have one of my viewers, he just finished watching another video and he just posted a comment with the picture of popcorn, and it's better than nothing. And of course, you can always support my work with your super thanks or with patreon.com. Thank you so much for watching Ushanka Show. We'll talk to you soon. До свидания. Goodbye.